Hello and welcome to the Wildcard Rewind podcast. Week 7 is in the books, and what a week it was. Let's get into it.
I just wanna rewind to when we were young and hard. Back to all those good times. Take me back to the start.
That's right, week 7. I'm calling it what a week, but it was actually a really strange week for fantasy. But we are joined today by the best three. We are all three of us reunited. Huge shout out to Hannah for running the show by herself last week. But before we go to the woman herself, Paul, my friend, my love, how are you doing?
Oh, it's so nice to be back in like 2015. We were watching Marcus Mariota throw touchdowns to Zach Ertz. Kareem Hunt was scoring touchdowns for the Chiefs. I had to check the date to see what year we were in last night. It was unbelievable.
It was very, very strange. It was a very strange late window. The only quarterback to throw a passing touchdown was Marcus Mariota, and the only quarterback to not throw a pick was Marcus Mariota, which is absolutely incredible. Talking about absolutely incredible, Hannah, thank you so much for running the show last week. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm really pleased that the crew is back together. Last week, you both abandoned me, which was very upsetting, but I just about made it through. I'm just glad we're all back because it's way more fun chatting through these things with you guys than it is on my own.
It is. And so I wasn't very well last week and had to drive back from Wales to Bath while in the midst of a cold. And I think that might explain some of my picks last week. It wasn't a hugely great performance, but we'll see when we get that. I've already put in some of the points for myself. I was discussing. I've bailed out Paul so badly, but we will discuss that when we get there. But we will start off with the breaking news of the week. Most importantly, to start with, in week 8, for some reason, there are no bye weeks. So you have your full contingent of players to choose from, which is incredibly exciting. But the biggest news of the weekend was Voldemort is dead. He's dead. Deshaun Watson tore his Achilles, which I don't know if we've had it confirmed yet. I think the Browns might have released a statement saying so, but it was obvious enough to anyone watching the game, that non-contact injury where you see the ping from the back of his ankle all the way up his knee. It was very obvious what had happened to him. For the first question, from a fantasy football perspective, and I'm going to come to you first on this, Paul. Obviously, we saw DTR immediately coming into QB2. He then got injured, and then it went to Jameis Winston. So we're not 100% sure how injured DTR is. But with Deshaun Watson, obviously, as well as being an awful human being, he was an awful quarterback. So does this make you any more excited for any of the Browns' weapons going forward?
So if Jameis Winston gets the nod, which I think he will, we all know what Jameis Winston is like. He likes to throw the ball. He can do it. We've seen him do it. We've seen him finish his QB1 on weeks because he's thrown like 1 million yards and loads of touchdowns and equally like the same amount of interceptions. But, I'm hoping this does give a bit of an uptick to somebody like Jerry Jeudy. I have a lot of Jerry Jeudy shares. And I'm hoping that it can give him a bit of an uptick. And also with Amari Cooper being traded during the week last week to the Bills, I'm hoping that he does become Jameis Winston's best mate, and he does see more targets and more receptions and more touchdowns, because honestly, I think they'll move the ball better with Jameis Winston than what they were with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I think at this point he's just a straight up better quarterback, which made it even stranger that he was the QB3 on the day and not the immediate backup to Deshaun Watson. The really interesting one to me is Cedric Tillman. He actually had 8 receptions on 12 targets yesterday, which seemed a bit strange because we know the weapons there, in theory, could be quite good with Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, and Elijah Moore. Hannah, is there any of these that you're particularly interested in? Do you see the same uptick as Paul with potentially a better quarterback at the helm?
I do think certainly the opportunity has to be there, right? If the quarterback's better and he's getting the ball to the targets, which Watson was not doing, then of course there should be more scope for fantasy value. The thing that I struggle with is I actually don't really like any of the receivers. Like, I know Judy has shown flashes in the past, but I'm just not convinced that he's the wide receiver that everyone hoped that he would be. And I fear a little bit like Elijah Moore, he's kind of just going to like fade into the background and we're not really going to hear much of him ever again, like pretty much most of the Browns wide receivers do until they beg to be traded away, and then they seem to manage to reincarnate themselves. So I'm not convinced that any of these wide receivers are going to be really anything more than flex worthy, although like Paul says, we know what Jameis Winston likes to do. He likes to throw the ball around, so you never do know. Judy did used to get a lot of those deep stuff from the slot, so maybe he's going to start doing that again. I'm hoping though that David Njoku will revive and come back to fantasy life, because this guy's awesome. We saw what he could do last year, and I really think and hope that maybe we could at least get Njoku, if nobody else. I suspect he's going to throw the ball around, so maybe nobody is that great, but I'm hoping for Njoku, because I think he did okay, didn't he, this week? Was it eight receptions? I think he got many yards, but he was targeted.
He did a little more than okay. He was the tight end 1 on the week, so 10 receptions off 14 targets, 76 yards and a touchdown. Because he obviously, I mean, most of us have stopped paying attention to the game by that point, but obviously Jameis Winston led them down the field and scored a touchdown, which was pretty impressive. I mean, less impressive given that it was the Bengals defense that he did it again, against. But obviously that did happen. That David Njoku was the tight end 1 on the week yesterday, so definitely could be of interest going forwards. This has been a really interesting moment, the Deshaun Watson injury, because obviously we generally as a community have an attitude of not victory lapping injuries. I think the consensus feeling being, unless they're a sexual predator, in which case it's fine, and in which case we all victory lap it and we're very happy about it. I'm very intrigued about Deshaun Watson now, because obviously he is one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. He's got that fully guaranteed deal. I know that there's talk about whether or not the Browns can now get out of it because of the injury. But in theory, he should be ready to play football midway through next year. Obviously, on top of the off the field stuff, I was trying to explain to my partner watching the game yesterday that Deshaun Watson hasn't even been one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the league this year. And there's only 32 starters. Hannah, we'll start with you. Do you think this is the last we've ever seen of Deshaun Watson? Or do you think he potentially still has life in the NFL?
I want to hope that it is the last time. I think the only way we're not going to see him again is if he chooses not to play, because, and he says, right, I'm retiring. Because I think ultimately the Browns don't have a choice. Like if he says, I want to come back, he's got this fully guaranteed contract, which they owe him loads of money. So I don't think they have much of a choice other than to say, okay, you can play with us. Now, they may say, fine, you can come back and you can be our backup, because this might be their opportunity now to say, well, actually, we've found someone else, you can be the second stringer. But I think unless he physically says, I'm retiring, then I think he's going to be back. And I reckon he's going to try come back, even though I think it would just make sense to be like, I've not played well. I've had lots going on personally, and I've had a million injuries. Maybe it's time to hang up my cleats with all of this money that I earned for doing nothing. It was totally wild, though. Did you actually see when he was being carted off the field? Like all of the Browns fans cheered and then were chanting, "You deserved it." So, like, totally wild scenes. I mean, they're totally fed up. This sounds really weird, but I am a little bit disappointed because I really wanted to see what the Browns were going to do. I'm like, they know that they need to bench him because everybody thinks he's crap, including all of his teammates, and they weren't doing it. I just wanted to know, like, what are they going to do? Are they going to bench him at some point? Like, how is this all going to play out? And I'm just really disappointed that he basically made this decision for them. And I just feel like I'm upset that I'm not getting the drama. You know what I feel about the Browns? And I just thought, this is great fun. It's like watching EastEnders. And now, I'm missing all out on that. And it's just going to be Jameis Winston and they'll be okay.
The thing I was most intrigued about was seeing, obviously, every single press conference, Kevin Stefanski comes out and goes, very much like the gun to the back. Deshaun Watson is still our starting quarterback. I love Deshaun Watson. I was really excited to see after he quit after the season that interview where he then goes, yeah, I wanted to bench him, and the Haslam said I wasn't allowed to. So I am a little bit disappointed as well. It's also quite disappointing because Browns fans were very on his side when they traded for him. Like, you can do all of this off the field stuff so long as you're good. That's kind of the NFL attitude, isn't it? If you're good, you can get away with whatever you want. Look at Tyreek Hill. But Paul, what do you think? Do you think we see Voldemort again, or do you think this is him done?
Well, as in, like, if you look at the Harry Potter books, Voldemort returns, and the day he comes back, we definitely have to do that thing where it's like we just do a show where it's like, he's back. He's back. Just leave it at that. But no, I think he's getting paid too much money. It's hard as an organization if you're going to pay somebody that amount of money. You know, I think I had a quick glance at it earlier. I think he's under contract 25 and 26, so he's being paid 46 million next year and 46 million the year after. How do you not go, mate? You get out there. Whether you come off that field broken again, I don't care. If I'm paying you this kind of money, you're going to be out there and you're going to be trying to do something, you know? So I think we do see him again. I think it'll be towards the end of next year. I think the only way we don't see him is if the Browns potentially have an early pick in the draft. Now, I'm not sure what the quarterback class looks like next year, but if they get a good pick in the draft and a good rookie QB that can come in and sort of do well there, I think then they might say, well, actually, we're going to leave it with the hot hand, you know. But I think they're going to be a bit like the Panthers, you know. I think Andy Dalton came in, he was doing well, and then he totally sucked last night. And they even put Bryce Young in at the end. I know the game was already done. And I think that's kind of the position the Browns are going to be in. We all love Jameis Winston. He can throw the ball. He's going to throw a lot of interceptions. We know he's good at that. And then, you know, I don't think they'll find the answer in between now and next year. So I think next year, again, if they're losing games and Deshaun Watson comes back, they're going to be like, right, you're going straight back in. See if you can do something for us. So I do think we see him again. And I want to see him back just for the entertainment purpose of watching Hannah go off on a rant about how much she hates the Browns, you know. So I hope he's back and I hope they suck again, you know.
So what do you think Deion Sanders would say if Shador was drafted by the Browns?
There is no world in which Deion Sanders is letting his son go to the Browns. I don't know how you avoid it, but there is no world in which that man is letting Shador go to the Cleveland Browns right now.
That would make me laugh so much just to see the whole spectacle of like them wanting to get him. Deion like, no way. Oh, so much fun.
They're currently, by the way, they currently have the 3rd overall pick. They're one of 4 teams with only 1 win, which the Rams got out of last night. The Rams moved out of. We got our 2nd win, which is exciting. The 2 teams picking ahead
Backed
of
him
them.
in the survivor pool.
Good job.
Going around.
The 2 teams picking ahead of them are currently the Patriots and the Panthers. The Patriots, we obviously know they aren't going to go quarterback. The Panthers, not sure. They potentially
Panthers
could.
need a miracle.
Yeah, they do. It's an okay quarterback class. So it's one of those a bit like, not quite like 2022 because that was pretty consensus awful, but one of them where we think there's maybe even actually the Bryce Young class last year, where we think there's some good talented players here. They'll probably go early. We can't really figure out who QB1 is, but there's enough that there's going to be a few in the first round. So yeah, for my piece, I definitely think we will see him again because I think he feels like he has a point to prove, but I don't think he's physically capable of proving it anymore. So I think we probably do see him again, unless they can figure out a way to get him off the roster based off this injury, like sneak out of the contract or based off any of the new accusations, get out of the contract, cut him, and then I don't think anyone's going to go near him with a barge pole right now. But let's move on to our 2nd breaking news of the week. This is a slightly sad one with an injury. So Brandon Ayuk was carted off the field yesterday with what looked like quite a serious knee injury. It looked relatively similar to Rashee Rice's, where the knee buckled. If I'm being honest, I would be surprised to see Brandon Ayuk again for the rest of this season. The 49ers are so banged up. They've been missing everyone except George Kittle at some point this season. Do you think, Paul, will come to you first? Do you have any interest in any of the other 49ers weapons? Are there any of the other wide receivers behind Brandon Ayuk? Or do you think Deebo Samuel is just going to see 20 targets a game?
Yeah. Can I let Hannah go? Because I've kind of, in my answer, I've sort of said I'm similar to what Hannah is. So I don't want to steal her answer. So Hannah, I'll let you go. I'll let you go first because I've got a similar opinion to what you have. But you put it on the show sheet first, and I'm good like that.
Oh, well, so thanks for change, Paul. You must be in a good mood today.
I am.
Generally, I'm kind of interested to see what Ricky Pearsall does. Obviously, he's just come back from his injury. My only kind of worry about that is obviously he missed a lot of the off-season. He's a rookie. We know that sometimes they struggle to kind of get going if they're late, coming into a season, just because they've not had that chance to kind of understand the offense gel. So I'm not sure he's going to do a lot, but I'm interested to see if he gets a bit more of a role. I think mainly there's going to be a bump for Kittle and Deebo. The only other guy I wanted to mention is a Deshaun Jennings. I think we've kind of forgotten about him because he's been injured for the past few weeks. But the last time he played, who was out? Somebody was out. I can't remember whether it was Kittle or Deebo.
It was Deebo. It was Deebo. It was against the Rams.
Yeah, and he obviously went off. So I do think they find him reliable, and I think he will be a consistent starter for them. My question is are we going to see Pearsall starting to mix in a little bit more, with that kind of new player, first-round pick, rookie upside that we might start to see by the end of the season? He's playing a bit more in that wide receiver 2, I suppose, role. I'm kind of classing Kittle as a wide receiver, and there's the tight end. The wide receiver 2 role over Jennings, or how much are we going to see of him sprinkled in? So I'm keeping my eye on him, but I'm not like putting him in my flex or anything just yet. Just gonna see what he's up to.
Yeah, relatively similar for you then, Paul.
Yeah, interested to see what Pearsall does because obviously he was shot in the off season, wasn't he? So I'm intrigued. I think he's probably somebody that I'd be looking at maybe stashing on my team because if he does come good, like Hannah said, it'll be later on. But try and be ahead of that. If he is going to be something, it'll be towards when you get to your championship playoffs and stuff like that, But yeah, ultimately, I think this is just more of a boost for like George Kittle and Deebo Samuel, even though Deebo Samuel really, really pissed me off this weekend. But we will get to that shortly.
Yeah, we will. I enjoyed looking at that in the show sheet. I'm really interested in Pearsall. I liked him as a prospect. I didn't expect him to go first round, but he did, which is obviously very exciting. He had a 16% target share yesterday. He was the second most targeted player behind George Kittle. Now, obviously, they were playing not only without Deebo Samuel, but without Deshaun Jennings as well. He missed the game. My thinking is that Deshaun Jennings, yes, had a very big game against the Rams. First of all, who hasn't? But the plan coming into the year would have been for Pearsall to be the wide receiver 3 on the team, not Jennings. So I'm very interested. I have a waivers video coming out tomorrow, and Pearsall is a real target of mine. Just because I think if he is fully healthy and he looked good yesterday, I think there's a chance that he ends up as a wide receiver 2 on the team. But also, Deebo Samuel in games without Brandon Ayuk over the last few years averages a 38% target share. So chances are it's probably just Deebo, but we'll have to see. So that brings us on, as you have obviously hinted, Paul, to looking at what we learned from the last week. So we are a rewind show, but we want to help the advice be actionable. So each week we look at something that we learned from the week before that we are going to take for the rest of the season going forwards. Paul, you have hinted at yours. What did you learn from week 7?
What I learned from week 7 is and I excuse my language for this, but I fucking hate all of this coach speak shit. Okay. So my main beef is with Deebo Samuel, and yes, it is fantasy related, but it's also I had a bet on him to score a touchdown, which obviously is crap because your coach is saying he's active, he's playing and everything like this, and he had an illness and everything like this, and then you don't use him, you don't put him out there, you don't do anything with him. Well, just tell us that to start with, because I'm losing money now because I'm betting on this guy to score a touchdown because you're saying he's going to be active. and then you don't play him. And then, I know they don't care about Paul Picking fantasy lineup and stuff like this. They don't care how he's getting on in the championship, but you end up going, oh, who am I going to put in? Am I going to put in Deebo Samuel, or am I going to put, I don't know, Jerry Judy in? Because we spoke about him earlier. Well, you're going to go, well, Debo's active. I'm going to put Deebo in. He's a solid player. He's somebody that I'd want. And then he goes and scores you a big fat 0 because coach speak again. And Lewis, and I know you've had a couple this week as well where you've played players and it's just, do you know what? Just be honest, man. Just go, look, the guy's unwell. He's not going to play. We're not going to use him. He's out. We're going to use everyone else. Brilliant. Fine. Thank you very much. Debo, I hope you get better. I hope you're back next week. Don't fill us with this crap where it's like, oh, he might play. He might. We're not going to play him, but he might play,
Yeah.
Sorry.
I get it. I get it from the coach's perspective, right? Because you don't want to say that one of your best receivers isn't there. You don't want to key in on that information, especially because they play very differently when they feed Debo to when they feed Brandon Ayuk. But they're going to know immediately that he's not there. So yeah, as you hinted at, I in Scott Fishbowl this week, I've had a pretty good score and I still got a bunch of players left tonight. But I played both Juju Smith-Schuster and Jordan Whittington, both of whom were active, both of whom got 0. The Juju one has really infuriated me because Andy Reid has already ruled him out for next week. And they didn't rule him out for this week. You could see him sort of testing the hamstring on the sidelines. But how can you immediately know that the player is going to miss next Sunday's game when you just had them active for yesterday's game? It really infuriates me. So I really like this one. I think making sure that you're active and making sure that you've got late swaps available. Maybe if there's questionable tags, to just think, do I really want a repeat of this again?
Auto sub.
Yeah, auto sub. But I don't know if auto sub works if they are active and they just get 0.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say is playing Debo or Juju or John Whittington will have given you more points than Devonta Smith, who was on the field for the whole of the game. So if this was any kind of week to play these guys, this was the one.
Do you know what? You've made me remember something. And Hannah, I know you're in this group because Murph put it in their 5-yard group, where he's like Devonta Smith -2 yards, Nuke Hopkins -2 yards, Jameson Williams -4 yards, Josh Downs 3 yards, Tank Dell 0, Cortland Sutton 0. Combined between all of them is -5 receiving yards. How bad is that? You know what I mean? That's 6 receivers, and combined they're -5 receiving yards.
As a podcast, we outscored those receivers this week. Pretty impressive, right?
Team Wildcard Rewind. Team Wildcard Rewind for the win. I'd start us all in the Scott Fishbowl.
I would as well.
Positions.
I think Hannah could get us a lot of return yards. I think she's nifty. Hannah, let's come to you for what you learned in week 7.
Well, I thought that this was actually a very good, I suppose, flag or flag plant for a strategy that I think people have been moving away from in drafts in recent years, and that is the robust running back strategy. And I think it's just given a little kind of sign, little indicator that the robust RB strategy is not quite dead. I think people have really started to move the other way now in drafts, go really wide receiver heavy, and really fading all of these running backs. And you could have got massive values so far this season. Obviously, I know there's a lot of the season to go, and running backs can be the most injured position. So things may change as we move along. But for this week, the top scorers of the whole week across all positions: number 1, Jahmyr Gibbs. Number 2, Saquon Barkley. Number 3, Joe Mixon. Number 4, Breece Hall. In 10th place, Bijan Robinson. And in 11th, Kenneth Walker. And if you look at it, actually, you could have probably drafted 3 or even 4 of these running backs in your first 4 rounds. And you would have had basically the highest score on the week. Now, I haven't done any research here at all, but I do think that the running back is becoming more important generally in fantasy again. I think we had that dip where we were getting into these, there's no longer a bell cow, it's these split backfields. Wide receivers are getting a lot more targeted. We've got these explosive offenses, so they're getting lots of yards. And so we're getting way more scoring from wide receivers versus running backs. And I've done no research, to be honest. But I do think maybe the way that defenses are kind of trying to match and manage these explosive passing offenses is opening the door for running backs to make a comeback in fantasy as these great assets. And I'm just really interested to see how things are going to affect ADP in the next off season. And I just think that, this strategy has been poo-pooed for quite a few off seasons now, and it is something that personally I've also moved away from. But I think we've got to also kind of give it its credit and realize that it is still a valid strategy. And actually, if you did that, you're probably doing pretty damn well this year versus all of us that took all of these wide receivers really early who are either injured or struggling. So it's just something, again, it's not something necessarily for week to week, but something for us to start thinking about as we move into next season.
I don't know if you got to see the cat jump up onto the laptop there, but thankfully no recordings were deleted, and no StreamYards were exited. I really like this one. I think this is a really good one. Running back this year definitely feels a lot safer. I think we're seeing a lot of wide receivers, even in the elite tier, go very under targeted. We're definitely seeing like Amon Ra. We're seeing games where he's going completely absent. Devonta Smith, as you just mentioned, like a lot of the wide Tyreek Hill, basically completely worthless to fantasy, didn't even get a target last week. Whereas the running backs, aside from CMC, all the ones at the top have performed really well. Bijan Robinson's the RB2 over the last 2 weeks. Breece Hall's the RB3 over the last 2 weeks. Like, these running backs are performing pretty well. So I really like this one. Mine is a slightly similar thing, looking back at draft strategies and looking towards sort of roster construction, and looking at the QB scoring this week, but also the QB scoring across the season is down. We've seen that passing is quite significantly down across the league. Do you guys know, without looking, who the quarterback one on the week is?
I'd already looked this up and I was going to mention it, but I saw you'd already mentioned it, so I do know.
I know because I've got the show sheet in front of me.
It's completely wild, though. This is like 2015, right?
It's insane. So the quarterback one on the week currently, pending Monday Night Football, is Russell Wilson, which I went back and looked. It's the lowest quarterback score. Oh, sorry, the lowest QB1 score on a week since week 18 of 2022, which is genuinely insane. Which, by the way, was also Russell Wilson, which I think is a fun little thing. But QB scoring across the league is really down. Now, Lamar hasn't played yet, and Lamar is the QB1 on the season. Baker hasn't played yet, and Baker is the QB2 on the season. So it could go up. They could beat out Russell Wilson this week. But this was supposed to be the season of the elite quarterback, of taking a quarterback high. You had, Lamar, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, CJ Stroud, Patrick Mahomes, Anthony Richardson. Like, you had all of these quarterbacks going in the top 4 or 5 rounds. I think you're probably only happy with them if you took Lamar Jackson. I think you're actively disappointed with any of the others, especially Patrick Mahomes. I think for me, and this is a learning point for this season, but also looking into draft strategies next year, I'm perfectly happy streaming quarterbacks, which used to be the strategy. And then people went away from it. Late round quarterback used to be the thing. But I think if you drafted Patrick Mahomes in the 3rd round, I'd be looking to start Drake May over him this next week. Like, Jalen Hurts is getting it done on rushing touchdowns, but if you taking Caleb Williams late, you'd be looking to start him over Jalen Hurts. Like, I think reevaluating that the top quarterbacks, aside from Lamar, really aren't performing. And just because you have the name of a Patrick Mahomes or a CJ Stroud or a Joe Burrow, like, doesn't mean you actually have to play them week in, week out. Look to the waiver wire, look for Russell Wilson, Drake May, Bo Nix is getting it done. Like, there are quarterbacks out there that you can stream, which I think is really not what we thought this season was going to be. But it is what it is.
I think this is awesome. Quick question. I don't know if you've got it in front of you. If not, do you know where Patrick Mahomes sits in terms of QB scoring fantasy so far this season, where he ranks?
Oh, I don't have it in front of me. I'm going to guess somewhere about QB. Do you mean points per game or just overall points?
Overall points.
I'm going to guess something like QB 18.
How about you, Paul?
I won't answer because I'm genuinely on the Fantasy Pros website, so I've got what I think is the answer in front of me.
So I'm on fantasy data, so it might be slightly different to you, Paul, but I have it as QB 22.
Yeah, exactly the same.
That's completely wild. Quite wild.
His highest game week was week 3, where he scored 17.4 points.
I saw earlier his highest scoring game week is lower than Jordan Love's lowest scoring game week.
Yeah, it's crazy. Isn't it? Again, this is something for us to chat about in the off season, but I really want to know, because I think scoring's just been wild this season, and I think maybe even if you didn't draft a QB like early, you might still have struggled with some of the players that you've picked, just because there's been so many players underperforming. But I'd really just wonder, like, which players you could have picked had you not taken an elite QB and gone with like a Jaden Daniels. Baker Mayfield, wild.
Baker.
Like QB2 on the season, like everybody counted him out this season because they were like, oh, it was just a one-off. We know that Baker generally is rubbish. Look at him go. Geno. I mean, Geno was like an afterthought. So many people didn't even draft him, even in like super flex leagues. He was like going as the QB like 30 or something wild. Like he's currently QB6 with Lamar and Baker to play, but obviously they're ahead of him anyway. Like people just massively, I think, overvalued the elite QB. To be fair, they did drop them a little bit this offseason compared to the season before, where they were going like round 1 and round 2. Yeah. But still, people like super, highly value them. And I think there still is, although maybe less, there's still values to find, certainly. And I think people just really, what have you done for me lately? Mindset.
Yeah, I think in redraft, like, you have to just treat it that way this season. And every fantasy site or YouTube or everyone on Twitter is saying, like, you can drop Patrick Mahomes. And for us to add to the pile, like, you can drop Patrick Mahomes. He's not good in fantasy this season, even though the Chiefs are 6-0. They're the only undefeated team in the NFL right now.
It's crazy to think in a 1 QB league, seeing Pat Mahomes hit the waivers, and it's like no one ever could have predicted that going into this season. But he is genuinely in a 1 QB league. He is somebody that you could easily drop.
Which I think is funny. I'd love to see if anyone can find the data on how often he actually is, given that everyone is saying you can drop Patrick Mahomes. Is anyone brave enough to actually do it? Like, is anyone actually going to drop Patrick Mahomes? Because you'll look an idiot if he turns it around.
And also, it's something that we've always said. You always start your elite players, don't you? And how many people would have started him week in, week out going, who do I start this week? Geno, who I took as my QB3 or QB4, or Pat Mahomes? And so many people have gone, I'm going to start Pat Mahomes. And you know what I mean? It could have lost you weeks. Genuinely could have lost you weeks this year, starting him over somebody, like you said, Geno, who is currently, QB6 on the season. It's mind-blowing. I love it.
Mad. Let's get into our regular features. So each week we do our stud, our scare, and our wild card. And we are doing a competition where each week the person who is most wrong gets a point. And those points at the end of the season, the person with the most will have to do a monologue about a subject of the other two hosts choosing. For a bit of a score update before we go into it, although I've already put in some points for this week because I didn't do too well. So it was 6 points to Hannah, 6 points to me. And because Hannah ran the show by herself last week and gave Paul and I both a point on the last round, Paul is on 7.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It's okay. I'm away for a month, so I know that basically I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose in the end. So
it's going to taste so sweet.
So we will start off with our stud. This is where we talk about an under the radar player who we think is going to smash this coming week. No, I'm not. No, I'm not going to give my excuses. I went for
We just
Jalen Polk.
bypass this bit.
I was going to say, to be fair, none of us did well. I mean, we can't really say that anybody did well.
I've really, really bailed you guys out here. So I went for Jalen Polk, who had 0 catches, which is not very good. Paul, you went for Xavier Legette, who had 2 catches for 9 yards and finishes the wide receiver 66. That's also awful. And then Hannah, you said Demario Douglas, who was my choice, but I was driving and didn't see that you'd already put him in, so I had to go with Polk. He had 2 catches for 14 yards. He was the wide receiver 59. Like, I will take the point this week because my player obviously got nothing. But I think there's a real argument that we should all be taking a point this week.
Yeah.
Can I just say something? Can I just say that 2 weeks ago, Hannah went for Dontavian Wicks, and he was a flop. And then a week later, I was like, I'll go for Dontavian Wicks, and he was a flop. And this week, nobody's gone for Dontavian Wicks, and he's finished as the wide receiver 14 this week.
So I should have gone for Dontavian Wicks. Is basically
if you'd
what
have
you're
gone
saying.
for Dontavian Wicks, you'd have won this week. But actually, you went for Jaden Polk and lost.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a point from me. I'll flash forward a little bit. I'm getting a point in the scare as well. It's not been a great week. But let's have a look at our scares, our studs for this week. Hannah, I'm going to come to you first. Who do you have as your stud? This is someone that you've had before as your stud.
It is. I have had him before, but I just feel like ever since I said him, he's actually played really terribly. The last few weeks, well, not played terribly, but just really not been fantasy relevant as he had been at the beginning of the season. But I'm going back to the well because I really think he's going to be able to pick it up. And that's Darnell Mooney. As I said, he's had a disappointing last few weeks, but it's that great matchup again, the Bucs versus the Falcons. I'm really hoping it's the same shootout that we saw on Thursday Night Football the other week. And actually in that matchup, he finished as the overall wide receiver 3. I do think he's the second kind of pass catching target on this offense. I know that, we're seeing a little bit more from Kyle Pitts, but I do think he's going to get back in the game this week. I think it's going to be hopefully, one of these wild games, and we're going to see Darnell Mooney back in the saddle.
Yeah, I love this one. I think Darnell Mooney has been one of the surprises of this season. It's quite easy to forget about because he's had a quiet couple of weeks, but he has firmly established himself as the wide receiver 2 on this team and is throwing back to some of that form for the Bears in Justin Fields' rookie season where he went over 1,000 yards. So yeah, I really like this one. And we've seen the Bucs go for huge shootouts recently, and I think there's going to be another one tonight against the Ravens. So definitely, I think there's a real chance for Darnell Mooney. Paul, I really like your one this week, especially because it's someone that really struggled this week. Who have you gone for as your stud?
I've gone for Jameson Williams in the Detroit Lions. I know Hannah's, I'm not going to give much away, but Hannah's gone for somebody else in the Detroit Lions in the scare. But I think the Lions are an absolutely unbelievable team, and I think they are going to be throwing bombs everywhere. And this has got a Jameson Williams kind of week written all over it. They're struggling to move the ball, and then all of a sudden it could be a 60-yard touchdown that he's taken to the house, and he's going to finish high up. And let's be honest, anything is better than like a minus. What did he get? -1 point this week or something like that. So, if he gets 1 point, I'm taking that as a victory. so yeah. But I think this week's got Jameson Williams sort of written all over it, and it's going to be all he needs is that one big play downfield, and I think that's going to be the answer this week.
Jameson Williams upset me last week for a different reason as well. I'm upset with Jameson Williams, and I'm upset with Grant Calcaterra. I had 2 3-fold touchdown ackers put together. One of them, Nick Chubb, Tyler Goodson, Jameson Williams. So that's 2 of 3. The other one, Saquon Barkley, Amari Cooper, Grant Calcaterra. That's 2 of 3. So yeah, Jameson Williams upset me last week, but maybe he can do a little better this week.
Debo's upset me this week, and Tyreek Hill. me and Matt FF Dynasty, good friend of the show, had who do we have? He had Jamar Chase and Tyreek Hill, and I had Justin Jefferson and Amari Cooper.
Oh wow!
We got Chase, we got Jefferson. Even Amari Cooper, that didn't even know what was going on in that play, was asking Keon Coleman next to him.
Yeah.
He was like, "What are we doing?" And he's pointing out what's going to happen. Catches a touchdown. Tyreek Hill, nowhere to be seen. Great.
You gotta drop me a message next week, and I'll jump in on that ACCA. It's a fun thing to do.
Okay.
I've gone for Elijah Moore. So we did mention about the Browns offense. I want to see Jameis playing, but even if he's not, Elijah Moore saw 6 receptions off 7 targets for just over 40 yards last week. Not the highest target share on the team. That went to Cedric Tillman, but I'm just not 100% sure of the talent there. They're playing the Ravens, who we know are quite vulnerable in the secondary. So I think there's a chance for Elijah Moore, and he's really versatile. So kind of the reason why I've gone with him over Cedric Tillman, who's sort of more of an X-wide receiver deep threat, is because if it's DTR or if it's Jameis, I think he should be able to work with either of them. He can work all 3 levels of the field. Also, Elijah Moore was my guy coming out of college, and he's done fuck all since. So it would be really nice to see him do anything. So watch as he gets me a point next week. So our scares for the week just passed. This is a hyped up player that we think could disappoint in the week ahead. And so Hannah, you did pretty well. You said Jordan Mason, who had 58 yards on the ground, 2 catches for 11 yards, finishes the RB24. Pretty good work. Because Mason's been really exceptional. Paul, you did pretty terribly in this one. You said Drake London. He had 6 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown. He was a wide receiver 7 on the week. So
take that touchdown away, and he's, you know what I mean. He drops down like 12 positions. So
yeah. So we're all agreed that Paul's got the point this week.
No, Lewis. Go on, who did you go for?
I went for Chris Godwin, who scored 0 points so far.
He hasn't played yet.
How many weeks has it been, Lewis, that you've said someone who plays on Monday Night Football? It's got to be at least 2 or 3. You don't seem to be learning from your mistakes here.
This is the 3rd time I've done it, and it's week 7.
Do you know what? Do you know what's even worse, Hannah? Do you know what's worse? I listened back to that show last week, and you even said when you were talking about it, you went, Lewis has gone for somebody playing Monday Night Football. He obviously didn't realise if he sends me another player, I will happily change it for him so we can have that. So you had the opportunity to change, okay? Well, and you didn't. So he obviously didn't listen to the show. Hannah didn't listen.
Do you know what? I listened to the show on, I think, Thursday or Friday. And it did occur to me. So as I said to you guys, I was driving. I got my partner to read out the games to me. I said, "Who's playing the Ravens?" She said, "The Bucks." And I went, "Go for Chris Godwin." And obviously, Jess isn't going to know. Well, he's playing on Monday Night Football, Lewis. You shouldn't go for him. I realized on Wednesday, and I was like, "Should I message and say?" And I was like, "No, I'm to blame for this, and I should take my punishment." So what? Hey, I want to set a challenge to you guys. I'm gonna take this point 100%. If Chris Godwin throws an absolute stinker tonight, can we set a line fancy points? If he scores less than it, can I have half a point taken off?
27 points.
If he scores less than 27 points. No, I was thinking like 6 PPR points. If he scores less than 6 PPR points, take half a point off.
No.
Yeah, fair enough. All right.
No,
who do we have?
You could have quite easily messaged Hannah. You had it all week. This show went out I listened to it last Tuesday, and I even praised Hannah for her taking the Baker Mayfield point. She could have easily gone, "I'm in charge. Somebody else having this point." And I thought she did really well. And then she gave you the opportunity, and you didn't take it. So tough shit.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's
right,
going
Paul,
to bite me in the arse at some point.
Paul, who have you got as your scare for this week?
I've gone for Drake May. And I think he's come into the league, and I think he's had an awesome start to the league. And I think he's going to get to a point where he plays against a team that are going to make it very difficult for him, because he is a rookie, and it is going to be tough for him. They don't just hit the ground running and dominate week in, week out. And I just think this week he's playing the Jets, and I think that's going to be his week where he starts to struggle a little bit, and they're going to make it very difficult for them. Don't get me wrong, I don't think the Jets put up a great effort last night against the Steelers, but I think he's in for a tough time at some point, and I think that this could be the week that it happens. So
it would be fun to see a reverse of the Sam Darnold I'm seeing ghosts out there game with a Patriots quarterback against the Jets defense. That would be a fun little moment.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
I quite like this one. I think definitely like rookie quarterbacks are going to struggle early on. Now, obviously, they haven't won either of the games, but I don't think that's too bad of a thing. Like getting Drake May better offensive line help early in the draft. Like he's going to be a quarterback for a while. You're not going to win this year. He doesn't need to win any games this year. And you're seeing him play really well, but they're going to struggle early on. So yeah, I really like this one. Hannah, who have you gone with?
I'm really scared of this one, to be honest. When I wrote it down, I was like, do you know what? I'm going to be brave. Like it worked for me with Breece Hall a few weeks ago. So do you know what? If you got to be brave. No pain, no gain. You're not going to win if you don't kind of be a bit edgy. So I'm going for it. Let's see how it goes. I'm saying Amon-Ra St. Brown, Lions wide receiver. I'm scared he can really, really easily be like the wide receiver 1 or 2 on the week, and I'll just look like a right idiot, which might happen. But the reasoning I've gone for this is because they're facing the Titans defense, and they're actually giving up the second fewest points to the wide receiver position so far this season. Now, I feel really scared relying on the Titans defense because we know generally the Titans are pretty shoddy. But, I think they did pretty awesome work with the Bills at the start of the game this week. I mean, ultimately it deteriorated and they gave up like 30 points. But, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to say Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm going to hope that he has a Breece Hall type game like he did a few weeks ago. And I'm going to go with Amon-Ra. Ooh.
I love going bold with these. I think sometimes we can find a way to go on the fringe of a bold prediction. So I like doing it. I think it was just before halftime in the Vikings game, which obviously biggest over under of the week, and a great matchup. Amon-Ra hadn't even had a target like midway through the second quarter. So this offense can run through the running backs. There's a real chance that he could disappoint. He can disappoint, and the Lions can still blow out the Titans by 20 points. So I like this one. I've gone for the same matchup. So I've gone for someone on the other side of the ball. I've gone for Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard has actually been really good this season. He's been the only good thing on the Titans offense. The Lions are great against running backs. They're a top 5 defense against the running back position. Tony Pollard is the only shining spot on a terrible Titans offense, like arguably the worst offense in the NFL. Didn't improve with Mason Rudolph. And probably Will Levis is going to be back in if we believe that it was actually due to a shoulder injury and not due to a serious case of being shit at football. So I think there's a chance that the Lions defensive line can key in on Tony Pollard, shut down the run. The Titans are going to be behind early, so they're going to have to throw the ball, which they can't do. So I think Tony Pollard could be quite disappointing for this week. Let's close out with our final segment. So this is Wildcard of the Week, a regular feature where we suggest something we think could happen in the week to come. The less likely, the better. So I gave 2 around the London game. I said that the Jags would lose by 2 touchdowns, which is incorrect. But I said that Drake May would be a top 8 quarterback, and he was. So good job, me. Now we're gonna have an argument about this one.
No, we're not.
We are.
I'm taking
Hannah.
the L.
Oh, you? Oh, okay, fine.
I'm taking the L. Yeah, I'm taking the L.
So Hannah said that the Pats were going to beat the Jaguars, which was incorrect. Also said that Neighbours was going to have more receptions than AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. He did than Devonta Smith, but not by AJ Brown. So 2 incorrect. Paul, obviously we normally give 2 predictions. Paul only gave 1. And Paul said that George Kittle, Sam Laporta, Mark Andrews, and Travis Kelce would finish as top 12 tight ends. Now, George Kittle did. The tight end one on the season did finish as a top 12 tight end, which is obviously a very, very unlikely prediction to make. And Mark Andrews hasn't played yet. Travis Kelce was tight end 24 and Sam Laporta tight end 31. So you agreed, Paul, that I think this one, even though Hannah got 2 wrong, I
would have made an argument if like Kelce and Laporta were still in there and they were like 11 and 12. I would have made an argument, but one was 24, so he's low end tight end 2, and Sam Laporta's like tight end 31 on the week. So they were both trash. I'll take the L with this one.
How Devo would be drafting Sam Laporta as tight end 1. Devoed this season.
I don't think I've actually got him anywhere in a redraft league.
I haven't either.
Because I remember talking in the off season with you guys, and it was like, I like Sam Laporta, I don't like his value, and I don't like where you were taking him, and that's gone to show this season. You know, not one of us liked where he was going. He was going back end of the first, early second in some drafts. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
the only one that's annoyed you, if you got him at the back end of the first, the only one that's pissed you off more than that is if you got Christian McCaffrey at the 101.
Yeah.
Apart from that, he's probably one of the biggest flops, you know?
But you know what, to be fair, yes, I'm disappointed that I took CMC at the 101, but at least it's injury. I can't be dealing when you're not performing. Like, Mark Andrews upsets me way more. I'm like, this dude we know can frigging do it. I'm like, well, what is going on? I was like, at least I know when CMC's healthy, it's going to be CMC. I mean, it's annoying that he's sat on in my IR spot, but at least I know at some point he's coming back and he might actually guide me to a championship.
I was going to say he'll come back and you'll be in the playoffs, like the first round of the playoffs, and he'll come back and just dominate everyone, and everyone will be going, see, totally worth the 101. Picked up a championship because of him, you know?
There's a very interesting argument there about, like, would you rather take at the 101 a player who doesn't contribute to your fantasy team during the regular season but is back for the playoffs, or a player who is healthy for the entire regular season and misses playoffs? I don't know my answer.
I think I'd prefer somebody, because if you're saying I can get my team to the championship or to the playoffs and then have CMC come back week 15, 16, and 17 and win it for me, I'd rather take that than take somebody like, I don't know, say, for example, Derrick Henry, who's been great this season, helps me get to the playoffs, and then week 15 is injured and misses the whole thing, and then I end up being knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. You know, I'd rather CMC come back and win it for me. But yeah, you can already see it happening, can't you? You can already see all these teams that have got CMC on their bench, on their IR, sitting there waiting, and then all of a sudden they're gonna qualify as the 6th team in the playoff, play first, beat them with CMC, go through and win the whole thing, and just go, yeah, nailed it.
100%.
I know we need to move on, but just super quick, right? I drafted CMC at 101 in one redraft league, right? And this is like probably an exception rather than a rule, but currently I'm about to be 6-1, and CMC hasn't paid a single, game for me. And obviously the first thing, the 212 is the first guy that's been playing on my team. Now this is rare. I mean, this is some sort of miracle, right? Rather than it being the standard. But if you manage to do that and then he appears just at the end of the season and into the playoffs, I mean, you feel like you're onto a complete winner there, don't you? Whereas, like, imagine if you had him all the way up to the playoffs and then all of a sudden he gets injured and you don't have him. Ultimately, probably end up going out in the first week of playoffs, and then you're just pissed that you're like, oh, it's this juggernaut, and then I didn't win.
It's a very interesting argument.
Subtle brag about the 6-1 team as well.
That's my only good team, so I've got to mention it somewhere. I've got to mention it. I was just looking the other day, I was like, oh, look, this is some sort of miracle. And it literally is, because everybody's performing shittily in fantasy this season.
Let's close it off with our wildcards for this week. So I'll kick us off. I have said that the Raiders put up less than 10 points against the Chiefs next week. And I've also said that in the Falcons-Bucks matchup, Drake London and Chris Godwin will both be top 10 wide receivers. And I've checked, and both of those games happen on a Sunday. So it's fine. Hannah, what do you have as your wildcard of the week?
Okay, I've gone a bit wild this week, and I think these probably both are going to be wrong. But do you know what? This is another one. Why not? Go big or go home, right? So I'm going to say that the Patriots beat the Jets and their woes continue. I mean, this sounds really harsh, but it is quite fun to see the Jets, think, oh, we're amazing, blow steam up their own arse before the beginning of the season, and then basically go down in flames because everything is going wrong. I just think it's so much fun. I love it because I think Aaron Rodgers is a bit of a smart arse and he thinks he's great. And I'm not saying that he's not a great QB, he has been, but he just has a bad attitude this season and it shows, and I love it that they're doing so terribly. So I really want the Pats to beat them. I don't think they will. I think that defense will probably just give Drake May difficulties, but it'd be so much fun.
I would like to see a 2-minute drill, though. Aaron Rodgers in a 2-minute drill at the end of the game. And just
with Devontae Adams.
To Devontae Adams, catches it just in and goes out, and then just marches downfield and scores a touchdown with about 15 seconds to go, and just go, do you know what? We are in 2015 again. Let's see it all. Let's see it. Let's see Aaron Rodgers in a 2-minute drill with Devontae Adams.
I know it is quite fun, and I do think ultimately they'll probably click again and get going, but I just want them to lose this week because it's fun, because the Jets were finally like, oh, we're going to be great. And all of the fans were like, oh, we're going to be great. And then actually, sorry, same old Jets, same old Jets. And my second one was fantasy relevant. So again, completely wild. It's probably not going to happen, but I'm going to say Geno Smith finishes as it. Oh, am I back?
You are back.
We had Geno Smith.
I think we might have lost Hannah. I think she might be back now. Hannah?
That's the fantasy world trying to tell Hannah not to say what she was about to say.
I've cut Hannah's Wi-Fi connection because I'm worried that she's about to say that she thinks Geno Smith is going to be the quarterback one on the week.
I don't think she's there. But shall I go with mine? Because I've only got Battle of the Rookies. So you've got the Commanders versus the Bears, which is Caleb Williams, the 101, and Jaden Daniels, the 102. So I think this week, and this is based on Jaden Daniels playing, I really hope he does. I know the reports are saying he's week to week, so I'm hoping he is back playing next week. But I'm saying that Jaden Daniels beats out Caleb Williams in every single part of that game possible. I think that the Commanders win the game overall. He has more throwing yards. He has more rushing yards. He has more touchdowns. Absolutely everything like that. He completely beats him out in every single way that you could think of a stat. He's going to have less interceptions, everything about that game. Jaden Daniels is going to prove that he should have been the 101, not Caleb Williams.
I love that. And I like that you've gone for what we in DFS circles call an onslaught. That you're like, I'm not scattergunning across this. I'm going to get everything correct. I'm like relying on less outcomes. I'm picking one game, one player, or one game, two players, and I'm nailing everything to that. I really, really like that.
I will write it in the show sheet as well, mate.
No, don't worry about it, man. I'll put it in the sheet. We have lost Hannah because she's so annoyed at that Jaden Daniels prediction. So in her absence, I will call time on the show. Thank you so much for listening.
Just to confirm that Hannah has gone for Geno Smith to finish as the overall QB1 next week. I just want to make sure that that's in the show so she doesn't back out of it when he finishes as a QB15,
She also said, Hannah, I'm not adding you to the stage. No, Hannah, get out. She also said that she thinks Deshaun Watson's going to start this week and finish as the QB2. With that in mind, I'm going to call time on this show. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, Hannah thinks it's Geno Smith, Deshaun Watson. She thinks Matt Castle's QB3, Joe Flacco RB1, Antonio Brown wide receiver 1. Those are her predictions. Hannah, I'm doing the outro, so you can't interrupt me. If you have enjoyed listening to the show, please subscribe and follow us on Twitter at Wildcard Rewind. Head on over to our YouTube channel, search for us at Fancy Wildcard, and make sure you give us a subscribe. And we will see you next week.